you for the opportunity to present my thesis, the final of my thesis. I got really excited about this. Okay, just to put it into context a little bit. Why did I do this thesis? It was because I was interested, it was my own, to satisfy my own curiosity. I had 16 ready beds, and I want to know how much food I produce. And because my thesis sits within the School of Environment and Planning, Urban Planning. So I thought it would be interesting to find out how much food people grow in their backyard and look at it from a planning perspective, a planning policy. So that was the trigger for my research. And I guess the context is the household food security. And I'm just, because more and more people are going to be moving into the city, the prediction by the United Nations is that by 2050, 75% of us will be living in cities. 2050, 75% of us will be living in cities. So, worldwide, yes. So which means that where is the food going to come from? So that was and also looking at food from peak resources, peak energy, changing climatic condition. So all this will impact the way we grow food, and I'm talking to the converted here, but it's just to put it into context of why I decided to do this research. And the objective of the research was to quantify how much food is produced. So basically, I get people to measure how much food they produce every time they go and get something in the backyard. They come back logging, and then after a period of time, I collect the data and I collate it and I analyze the data. So that's measuring the potential capacity. And I also want to look at food as a social movement, because as we know, there is the global food sector, and then within that you have the alternative food sector, and you have the local food sector, and you have the community garden, and then that very small sector is what we produce in our backyard. But it all sits within the food system. But the one that is talked about is on everybody's mind is the global food system, which is highly globalized, as we all know, and is over-dependency on inputs, fossil fuel from production to distribution, and is highly centralized distribution system that is organized along just-in-time delivery principle. Does everybody get that, yeah? And which means that it's also highly vulnerable to disruption, to natural disaster, to civil unrest, to so many things. And I don't know if you heard of this, Lord Cameron Millington. He was the former head of UK Countryside Agency. He once said, the nation, he was talking in context of the UK, that the UK is only 9 meals away from anarchy. What he meant was that our local supermarket has supply carrying capacity of only 3 days. So if something happens, if the price of oil goes up to $200 a gallon, there's going to be disruption to that supply. So which means that people are going to go and buy, and within a few hours, the shelves will be empty. And this has happened before in the UK. So these are the things that we're not aware of as consumers, but it's the reality. It's not talked about. A lot of people are not aware of this. And so that is why I was interested in doing my research.
Is that your
That is the nest. There is a link to my thesis. If you download the whole thesis, you can. There is actually, I wrote that from the Daily Congress. He has a special one in relation to energy. So I just put it in the context.
Really beautiful.
It is supply expressed. So the background to the research. I use a mixed approach methodology, which means that I use both quantitative and qualitative for my research project. Because I want to get a bigger picture, bigger understanding of, it's good that people are doing it, but I also want to know why they're doing it, what is their motivation for growing food in the backyard. So for the quantitative, it's basically people just weigh whatever that they harvest from the backyard with using the kitchen scale and then just log it. And at the end of the period, I collect that from there. It's all done electronically, nothing is done by paper, everything is done electronically. And the quantitative is the same, it's a survey of the set of questions, finding out why they do it, what do they do with the surplus harvest, and also I ask them the motivation, why do they do this? And I decided to pick 70 kilometers radius of the CBD simply because if you looked at the map of Melbourne and that's the CBD, and you take a string 70 kilometers, basically covers all the urban growth boundary. Because that's where a lot of our food actually comes from, the urban growth boundary.
So does that stretch out to Japan?
Yes. Yes, 70 kilometers up to Whittle Sea, just starts with Moreland. There's another shire.
Orange.
Yeah. Mitchell. Yes. Southern Mitchell has been absorbed into the urban growth boundary. And 15 household, I sent out a massive email through social media, through blog, through Instagram, through all my social media avenues. I have Twitter, Patterson, and there was a lot of interest, but a lot of dropped out because they just couldn't commit to doing this every time they come with something. It's understandable, sometimes people move, people got sick, whatever. So in the end, 50 data came back. I was hoping I'll get a more broader demographic, but everyone who responded who took part, they were all professional, they were all middle class. So they were like ITs and midwives and lecturers. So there was nobody from the global social economic group.
You draw any conclusions about this?
Pardon?
Talk about whether you draw any conclusions from
Yes.
that.
20% of renters, so it's pretty good, I thought. So that's the location of the Party research. So a large concentration obviously was in the northern suburb where we are, and I think that's simply because of my own personal connection. It's not a reflection of what happens. That doesn't mean that this suburb produces more food than other suburbs. It just happens that I'm based here. I'm connected to society, I'm connected to all my networks I'm here in this area. So I think that's the only reason why. So a large concentration in northern suburbs, Ascot Vale, Coburg North, Ascot Vale South, Preston and Thornbury. And there's one in Clifton Hill and Denley East. This crossing in Werribee, so they were the most furthest that I could find who responded to my call. So food in a living context. Why is food important? Growing food closer to where we live. And one of the reasons is, of course, because more and more land is being released for urban growth to accommodate more people coming to the city. And areas most affected are Cardinia, Casey, Hume, Melton, Michelle, Whittlesea, and Wyndham. And some of these areas are they're the prime agricultural land. And research has been done, and there have been lots of reports by Big Health and other people that show that more than 50% of Victoria's vegetables are grown within 100 kilometers of Melbourne. That's like, that area is actually is like the food bowl of Victoria. So there's a lot of food that's grown in that area, but that area has been being absorbed into urban growth, which means that they turn into housing. So there is that tension between feeding people and housing people. And because there's social implications, because you're creating a divided city between people who live in the city that we have close, we have access to fresh food, we have access to health services, and people who live out on the fringe, and they are so very dependent on cars, it's much harder to get fresh food. I think, personally, I didn't realize this until I started doing my research, that there are actually pockets of people who don't have access to fresh food. By talking to Sarah and Pam, like, it's unbelievable. I could not believe it, actually. Especially when you talk about food security in Australia, I think it's not even on most people's mind. It's just like, what do you talk about food insecurity in Australia? We have plenty of food. It's, yeah. So, the data collection was over a period of 1 full year, from July 2012 to July 2013. Because that represents a full planting calendar, and also the way that collected is in between season. Because I don't want to concentrate only in summer, because we all know that we get the best harvest in summer. But if you're a good gardener, you can produce food all year round if you know what to grow. So that's the total cultivated area, which is 1,096 square meters, which is not a lot. We divided that between 15 households. And the total yield was 388.7 kilos. And the way it works also that I just get every household to do 12 weeks, because I know that it's going to be too much to get people to commit for 1 whole year. I do it personally myself for the last 3 years because I'm curious. I think Angela and Yard is done it for the last 4 years. So I think he's the only other person I have been doing it consistently for so many years. I just want to know how much I grow from backyard, and I have only like 60 square meters. And that's the total number of eggs. Not everybody have chickens in the backyard. And 10 to 25% surplus, which people redistribute through friends, families, food swaps, through local church. So this food do get redistributed. So it builds that community connection as well. There is no correlation between plot size and yield. And I guess it's because the people with young family, they want to keep some of that land for some of that space for the kids to play for recreation purposes. So you just can't afford to grow your entire backyard. That is why some people have much bigger backyard, but they don't produce as much as someone who maybe have 30 or 40 square kilometers of planting space. But you can dedicate that entire space to food production.
So you can just look at the cultivated area.
Cultivated area, get people to estimate or measure the cultivated area. The plot that they use for growing food, that doesn't include like space that they use for the kids to run around. The study reveals that the backyard food production is capable of producing a great diversity of edibles. What is interesting is a lot of the stuff that people produce are not commercially available. So you get things like apple, cucumber, acorn, squash, tobacco, coca, orange, yacon, and much more. So it's very diverse, over 100 varieties of fruit and veggies and nuts. And perhaps the most interesting for me was somebody, actually is the person in East End. He also has a mini livestock, so I don't know if you're familiar with that. That is, he cultivates insects, he cultivates mealworms. Sheep, which is the larvae of dark-tongued beetle. So they're about that long, but they're just larvae. They're just like worms, basically.
We use them for eating.
He still fries them with butter and chili. Yes,
You eat it
food.
fried over the course of the year.
I'm a vegetarian.
That's okay. They will make you vegetarian all the time.
No, but there were photos of him stir frying it and his kid loves it. But my supervisor took it up because he thinks it's too much. So, take it out. I wanted to look at it, like, this is great, because he gave me permission. I said, yeah, use it. So,
I think you should put them in the presentation. Don't worry.
he also keeps quail, so he feeds his family quails, eggs and quail meat. And he also has fish, but during the data collection period, he was not harvesting any fish. He's not poor, he's an IT specialist, so that's really interesting. I spent 4 months in Edinburgh, we had a lot of those.
And did you, was it also trees or just grass?
It was trees, there were fig
was
trees,
trees,
nuts, somebody has almonds, olives. So it is a variety of trees, yeah.
And they were all established gardens.
I didn't look into that, that was not part of the scope because
Okay.
yeah, I had to narrow it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's so easy to want to do so many things.
Yeah.
So that's the pie chart of all the produce. What I did was I divided them into broadly into 9 categories. So berries covers all type of berries, like lemon berries, and strawberries and raspberries, citrus means like limes and lemons and oranges. And it doesn't include the eggs and the honey. These are just produce that's been planted, that's been grown. So like honey and eggs there. And it's not represented in the chart.
So you measured, for example, if people took leeks or whatever, did you weigh the whole leek or the leek prepared?
The fresh produce, the leek.
So the whole leek.
The whole leek when they pull it out of the garden before they cook it.
There was quite a bit of work involved because they would have had to wash it. Like instead of just chopping the end, they would have to wash that.
They don't have to wash it as long as they shake off the soil. I'm just interested in what people produce. So if you take a pumpkin, so it's the whole pumpkin before you peel it, before you seed it. I think that would be too much to that.
Do you mind explaining a little bit of the pie? What was in the pie?
Yeah, what were the
This is
really?
in the pie.
So if you look at the pie, the largest section of the pie, 21%, is other. Other than
So is that the top 20?
What's the pepper one?
other is things like asparagus, things like almonds, olives. So it's not. I can't put it in a nice neat box.
So what's in there? What's in
So that's fruits. So fruits, so which means like apples and
Actually, we produce a
nectarines.
lot of fruit then, 'cause that's a big percentage.
At least 15%.
Yeah, well, I thought more vegetables on there, so that's actually a lot of fruit.
But there is a lot.
What's the orange one?
Yeah, two vegetables.
See that orange one, that's citrus.
Yeah,
That's the other. That's all the nuts. And
no, this one, yeah.
the orange, that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's leafy greens.
And what about the blue opposite that?
That one.
Yeah.
Beans.
Ah.
So veggies is a lot. So collectively,
Did
veggies.
you do a diagram that had veggies, fruits, and all this? Then again, so that's fruit.
I do have a table that breaks that down, so you know. It's in the TCCG slide.
And what are some of the other things that we can't see?
Carrots, broccoli, beetroot, capsicum, cabbage, cauliflower, leeks, herbs, potato, salad greens, tomatoes, zucchini, cucumber.
And with the data you have, could you organize it in season to see if there's a
You could, but that wasn't part of my, I wasn't.
But that's not that
I could, but I purposely designed it so that it's inter-season. Yeah. So it's sometimes between spring and summer, winter and spring, because I don't want it to be just purely summer or just purely.
What were you most surprised by? You got this done. Was there anything that left out you?
It's just the variety. I'm just amazed by what people grow in the backyard. I just can't relate. Yeah, it's amazing what people grow in the backyard. And somebody's backyard that I visited, mushrooms and yabbies and cool. We know yabbies.
But then maybe with what you asked of weighing everything, you must have attracted very dedicated clients that also try to prove something by saying, look at how much I grow, because they possibly already know they grow a lot. And hence they're interested in it.
It's interesting because when I talk to some of them informally, they would say, I never thought about how much I grow in my backyard. So that's one of the reasons why some people took part in my studies, because they were curious themselves to find out how much they can grow in the backyard. Some people have very small plots and they just grow only one thing, is garlic. Garlic and comes in the other. So other is big, other is very generic. It covers a lot of things. Any more questions on this one? Food production concept. That's interesting as well. Everyone adopted organic methods of growing. Everyone had a compost practice composting, but not everyone had a work farm. Not everyone had a rainwater tank, but the majority did. Permaculture was top of the list, obviously. Some people did biodynamics, and it's really interesting. The things that people do in their backyard, it blows my mind away. The tendency is to adopt more than one method of growing food, and the most productive is someone who has only about 80 square meters and produces more than 50 kilos within the 12 weeks. But he uses a combination of water gardens, orchard culture, and fruit forests. And he's very, very productive. And I've been to his backyard. His backyard is his chocolate block. I'm not supposed to say who they are. It's part of my age, so I can't have it too far. It's okay. And of course, insects, that was the thing that was a big surprise for me, that there's this person he cultivates insects, which is it's very common in Southeast Asia, in Africa, but not in a developed country like
Did you
Australia.
have permaculture? Do you come from a country that was really insect cultivation, or is it from
No, it's Aussie.
Wow, that's more surprising.
Yep.
It's
Yes. Yep, it's an IT specialist.
How do you kind of wake up one day?
There's been a lot of stuff in the media about food security and the future of insects, I think. So I'm not that surprised that someone's been experimenting with it.
Yeah.
I just think it's fantastic.
It is, yeah.
Even though I didn't fit the banana, it tastes like that.
So the conclusion is that food production in Melbourne is a thriving activity, and it's not, the objective is not self-sufficiency, but it's to supplement what you have at home, or supplement some of the food that so that you don't have to buy everything. And because the surplus harvest is redistributed. And when you talk to people, why do they do it? it gives them a sense of ownership. It gives them the freedom to grow what they want to eat. It gives them the freedom to experiment how they want to grow food.
I think the other one on my part is I like to watch things grow. And because food grows quickly, it lasts.
So that's fine.
It grows quickly, and then you eat them, and then you grow another lot, it grows quickly. So they have a quick turnaround. So if you're like standing out there and watching them.
Other ones, like,
I also just hate shopping.
some things you don't get. Flowers,
Yeah.
yeah. Loves of kind of
Well, the five main
That's why he.
the five main reasons that people cited as growing food is one is they want to know where the food comes from. It's food safety.
Yes.
They're concerned about pesticide. They're concerned about GM food. So that's one main reason. Another one is they want to reconnect their children with the food production because they want their kids to know where food comes from. So the main reasons. So some of them cited environmental reason, and some cited because it gives them pleasure and it fulfills certain spiritual aspect of their being. So yes, that's pretty much it. So that's where you can download it. This is when you read it. It's very rhyme. It's pretty wrong. It's not exciting reading. It's
good advertising.
and the picture will take it away, honestly. But there is an abridged version of my blog, which then you don't have to go through all the rhyme, all the literature review, and justifying the methodology that I decided to use. And it's pretty rough. It's not exciting reading.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, I'll just
So you put it in
So I'm just thinking about the figures. So it was an average of a kilo of produce per about 3 square metres of land.
You would have to divide
Yeah.
1096 divided by 50. That would give you the average.
Yeah. So it's about 1 kilo per 3.
So 388
Do you
divided
know
by
for the period of time?
Well,
It's for 1 year.
12 weeks though, isn't it? It's only 12 weeks per person.
12 weeks per person.
Yeah, so it's actually only 12 weeks. It's not.
But the entire results of a period of 1 year.
Yeah, but then your house.
But the land is the total of everybody, so
Yes,
the land total.
Yes, it is
the land cover everybody.
Taken as a
And
12 week.
Except you're probably going to do the
Slice.
trees.
Yeah. But I think if you kind of guesstimate, do you know what the average, not industrial farming is?
No.
I'm just interested
Yeah,
as to what.
If you think of it, one plant of tomato will take less than a square meter and it will grow as well. So it's not
cherry tomato, you get 5 kilos of it.
Well, to give you an example, from our backyard, which is really about 60 square meters, we get an average about 200 kilos of food a year.
Yeah.
60 square meters. 60.
200 kilos.